Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. Is your board of directors leading your company in the right direction? Let's find out from our guest, Didier Cossin. Didier, thanks for being with us today.
It's a pleasure, Bill.
Now, Didier, you've written a book, High Performance Boards, and this is what you do every day, right? You work with the board of directors.
That's right. I do that very much around the world. It goes from Asia to Europe, Middle East, Africa, US, of course, Canada, and with all types of organizations, with sovereign wealth funds, with large corporates, with small corporates, with non-profit humanitarian organizations, even sports organizations.
So, to put it simply, you know what you're talking about.
I've done that for 20 years.
So we hope so. Now, I know in your book, one of the words you used is governance, and I don't use that word in my everyday conversation. So how would you define the word governance to our audience?
Really, governance is the art of decision-making at the top of organizations or countries, for that matter. It is really this art of decision-making that has become so crucial in today's world because of all the complexities we're facing, right? The technological, social, economic complexities. Decisions have become even more important than leadership skills. And leadership is how you take a company from A to B. Governance is about deciding what B is going to be.
Now, it's very interesting because as you and I spoke a few seconds before the show, well, we've been on for 33 years, and I don't think we ever talked about the board of directors. We've talked about management, leadership, business, motivation, sales, etc. But today we're talking about that board of directors, and that's kind of an organization that we know it's there, but we've never delved into it till we had you on the show. But you say they actually often fail their organization. Now, we just kind of think they're a bunch of important people who always do the right thing. So how does the board of directors fail?
Well, obviously, we've had spectacular failures, right? Whether you think of Volkswagen in Europe with the pollution emission scandal and the lack of oversight there, or whether you think of Boeing in the US with this network club of board members that were together on the boards of Caterpillar and Marriott and were clearly in their comfort zone and not challenging management and supervising management as they should. And so boards overall can lead to spectacular failures, but many of them, it's not as spectacular as that. It's just picking the wrong CEO, not overseeing the strategy in the right way, not making sure that everybody is working at their best for the organization at large. And that is very common because you understand this used to be a gentleman's club and the world has changed. 20 years ago, boards did not matter as much as today because today the world is very complex. And the abilities from the board to connect with the right stakeholders, to engage management productively has become much more powerful than in the past. That's why governance has become the single differentiator of organizations today. If you look at the 20%, 1/5 of the better governed companies of the S&P 500, you add 10% of performance. So the better governed companies perform much better than the others, only based on the board of directors.
So even more important, what you're telling us today, and once again, many of us, when I first thought of board of directors, I said, gee, this is the elite people. It's like the kings and the queens of the world. But many of us do sit on boards. We're on a church board, a school board, the library board, a not-for-profit, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Little League, something like that. So we do have a role in this, and what you're telling us, I'm sure many of the things will roll over into our life. Now, I have to ask you the toughest question. What's harder, diagnosing a governance problem or curing it? You're talking to the boss, the Pope, the president. How do you tell them, got to make a change, or you're doing something wrong?
Yeah, that's very painful. Actually, diagnosing is very easy. And my book, is really about that. But the transformation is hard. Diagnosing takes me, in the easy cases, it takes me 20 minutes of a discussion with a chair or with the right board members or sometimes a board secretary to figure it out. But even if the chair is not aware of the issues, you see them quickly and you figure it out quickly. But transforming a board is hard work, it takes time, and improving governance, first you need the will, right? And many people don't have the will to change. But even when you have the will, it's a long time. It's like changing a culture. You can change a culture of an organization, but it takes a long time to do it. We've seen it with Uber. We've seen it with BP. Actually, these culture changes, these governance changes are hard to implement, but it's possible to do it. And the best in class, they work on their governance because, it's not reaching the moon. Improving is already something. It has such impact on an organization. And we all know the dysfunctionalities as you were saying, right, in board of smaller organizations, we all see that. We all see the dysfunctionalities, and we're not quite sure how to tackle them. But little by little, you can improve things. The person who does not contribute, the person who's quite a disruptor, the board that's a bit sleepy. You see some of these boards are taking your energy. Some of them are bringing energy. You can see the differences and you feel that very easily, actually. But transforming that is not so easy, but it can be done. It's like health. You're looking at your own health, right? And my gosh, if you're a bit overweight, right, it's easy to see, right? It doesn't take a long time, right? It's hard to work on, right? If you have, if you have a cardiovascular problem or if you're, all these things, right? They're easy to spot, but it takes quite a while to work them out. But we do that, right?
I think that's a great analogy. I really like that one. When you're dealing with these boards, what would be some companies that we would know instantly their name and you would say what's really good about them is the board? It's not the accounting department or the sales or even their retail, but they have a really good board of directors. Is there a few that come to mind that we would know?
I'm a bit, I'm very often asked what's the best board in the world, right? And I must say that's a very difficult answer. Exactly, and if I come back to health, right, who's a perfectly healthy individual in the world, right? It's very hard to spot, right? So you have some boards that are better at some things, right? So Apple has been very good on innovation, for example, and customer contact. They've evolved a lot. There has been a big transformation of the board at Apple, within the last 10 years towards customer understanding, which very, very intriguing, actually. You've had the incredible transformation of the Wells Fargo board, which needed that transformation, right? So you see, but typically what I look at in boards is being best in class in one area. For example, best in class in understanding non-shareholder stakeholders, the other types of stakeholders. And you have great boards for that. Unilever, Mars are very strong there. You have boards that are very good at organizing CEO succession and performance review, making sure they always have the best CEO and always tuning to that. You have boards that are very good at strategy design and shifting the strategy, as the world shifts. So it depends. You have, you don't have the best board in the world. You have best boards in certain areas, I would say. And on the last, maybe the last dimension is really transformation, boards that are supporting transformation. And here I'll quote a Finnish company for once. It's a company called Neste, which used to be the largest, the Exxon, if you want, of Finland, and has fully transformed in biodiesel, in renewable energy. And while, the large oil and gas companies were dividing their market capitalization by a factor of 2. They've multiplied their market capitalization by a factor of 5 within the last 3 years by being much more green. And there, when I was discussing with that board, I was impressed that every board member knew their own carbon footprint. So they had a personal commitment, if you want, to that transformation that was very clear, because that dedication is very necessary for quality of governance.
Didier, at this point in the show, we just want to remind our listeners that you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Our guest today is Didier Cossin. He's the author of High Performance Boards. And Didier, would you tell us where we can get the book and if there's a website where we can learn more?
Yes, absolutely. You can get the book, at Amazon.com very simply, right? High Performance Boards, Didier Cossin. But you can also look at more materials at imd.org, imd.org, which is a business school where I chair the governance center.
And I'm sure those people know what they're doing, because it sounds like when we talked before, the people at IMD, if they're working with the board of directors, they better be pretty sharp. They've got a lot of companies in the world in their hands that they're working with. I'd also like our audience to know that the spelling of your name, your first name is Didier, and the last name is Cossin. And if they didn't get that, we'll give that to them again before the end of the show. What is the size of most boards? When you go to a board of directors, how many people do you usually find? Is there an average size?
So there is a big variation, right? I see boards, let's say 5 is a bit of a minimal. You have 3 people type of boards, but that's not really a board. 5 is fine, and 5 is a good board. And then I go to organizations that have 25, 30 board members, and that's ridiculous, of course. Pirelli, the tires used to be 25 people. That was a disaster. And many international organizations are 25, 30 people. These are disasters of governance. So what works? I would say for medium-sized organization, 5, 7. I like to stay single digit. For very large organizations, you can look at double digits. But really, once you're above 15, this is very hard to manage. And the trick is there, right? It's a difficulty to manage board dynamics and get, that decision-making that is effective at the top. I'm looking here at a board that's reducing in size, and many boards now are ambitioning reducing in size, and I encourage that.
Didier, let's just say I was opening up a clothing company, and we'll picture it like a Nike to give something that people know about. So I'm going big time, but I ask you, I say, help me pick out a board. Do I look for big name people that everybody would know, the baseball player, football player, or even the team owner because they're the business person? Is that what I'm looking for? Or is it a specialty in accountant, in sales, in marketing? Or is it just somebody famous that'll attract attention and bring people in?
No, you want people that are dedicated first. This has to be, it's a real job. It's a real job, and it's not that well paid. So it's really about, being committed to the organization and to the success of the organization. But you need people that are knowledgeable, of course, and knowledgeable in different areas. So you're very right, Bill, that it has to be a map of different skills. Right? And you have to figure out the maps that you need. So you need to think, you probably need someone with financial accounting. You probably need someone, if you're going retail or manufacturing in your case there, you probably someone with technology abilities as well. You need someone with good manufacturing skills. You need someone who can relate to the customer, so an athlete may be also very good. Not for promotion, right? Because a board is discreet. As you said at the beginning of this show, right? The board is typically not on the front page of the papers, only in disaster cases, right? So you need people that are dedicated and discreet and that complement each other, but not only in skills, also in personalities. You need, someone open to change. beside someone conservative. You need someone who's introverted with someone that's extroverted. You need diversity. And within that diversity, you need to bring all these people with their diversity of perspectives to come back to the better decision for the organization.
Do you find, and I'm just wondering this, going through your book, you made me think, and your book is High Performance Boards, so many questions I never even thought of before. But for a board, are you looking at, are you seeing that boards are getting younger in age? Before, I would have thought you want the old and the wise person who's been there. They've made their mistakes, perhaps, and now they've learned from it. But today, a board is facing, well, right now, the virus crisis, the COVID-19. We have millennials. People are talking about them. We have technology. How is that changing the world? Artificial intelligence. What is that doing to our future? They have to be knowledgeable about so many things that either were not there 5 or 10 years ago, or were so far in the background that we weren't worrying about them. It's like worrying that there might be a lion 20 miles away if we're in a forest. We're worrying about what's around us right now. Is that changing the makeup of the board, or are you seeing anything where that's involved?
Yeah, I think there is much more appetite for age diversity. But make no mistake, experience matters, and experience brings a lot of value. And I think at this stage, experience trumps many other dimensions. But connectivity to stakeholders and connectivity to the new world is important as well. And thus, age diversity, I'd say you still have an average age that's going to be high, but why not have a couple of people that are of a younger generation? Maybe not youth, right? I do work with family boards where sometimes you have, very young person who's on the board, and sometimes these are productive. But maybe starting 30, 35, right? People that have had still good, interesting experience, because people have experience at 35, and see the world with a different angle. And then if you want to tap the knowledge of the youth, right? Well, why not invite them from time to time to the board meeting? Why not interview them from the board? I have a board where they interview the interns as they come to the organization. It's a large company. It's 100,000 employees. Large company, but they still will invite a couple of 21-year-olds to actually come and talk to the board about why are they joining the company, how do they see the culture, why did they come to this company? And you get insights from that.
So this board, in a 100,000-person company, they interview the interns.
Yeah, a few, but it helps them keep in touch, right? I think being in touch is one of the challenges of today's world. Yes, you're in an elevated position, but let's make it clear, right? Being elevated and detached doesn't work in today's world, right? We live in a complex world. You need to have the feet on the ground and to understand what's happening.
Now, I read in your book, and again, I never even thought of this with the board. We think of it with the company, but boards have a statement of purpose or a board charter statement. Could you give us an example of that? And is that the same one that, does it tie in with what the company has? I mean, it makes sense that you would think it should, but do they separate over years, and maybe the company is just profit-oriented and the board says, wait, we started out as a social company, we want to make the world better and greener or whatever? What are you seeing?
That's right. Boards typically have a sense of mission that's a bit longer term than management. So typically they look 15, 25 years, while management will look more 5, 10 years. But a good example, but it's hard to say whether it's board or executive because, it's dominated, of course, by one man, is Tesla purpose, which, I don't remember the exact words. I didn't prepare for that, but it's transition to new energy, right? And typically, and you know that before becoming CEO, Elon Musk was board member. at the origin of the company. And then he took over as CEO later, actually. And that definition, to me, is very board-like. Might not be the most pertinent example because Tesla is so dominated by this individual, but still that reflection is the right one. The longer-term view with more stakeholders involved is a board type of perspective that is less executive-oriented.
Didier, again, at this point in the show, I'd like to remind our audience, if you're wondering who we're talking to, how are we learning all about high-performance boards, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Our guest is Didier Cossin. He is the author of High Performance Boards, and his name is spelled Didier Cossin, if you're looking for the book. And Didier, would you tell us where we can get it and the website where we can learn more?
Very easy to get it on Amazon.com and look under my name or under the title High Performance Boards, or at imd.org, the business school where I chair the Center of Governance. IMD as in I, middle word marketing, last word donkey, imd.org. Okay, we're going to look that up and find out some more. Now, if I was calling you right now and I said, just by the way, I got appointed to the library board, is there a bit of advice you could give me? Talk a lot, don't talk a lot, or agree with the older people? What would you tell me today? No, I think first to contribute, but make sense of the dynamics, of course. And, I think the book has good tools to use to see where the board is maybe a bit weaker, where it is strong, and you can push things around. And then if you're talking about, the dynamics on the board itself, look for red flags. And by the way, you should do that before accepting the board membership.
Good point.
Right?
Thank you.
Because you don't want to be on a board that's going to compromise you, right? You don't want the authoritarian chair that does not accept challenge, right? Because a board lives from the challenge. And governance is a dialectic process, right? It's exchanging. It's a process of constructive dissent, right? It's disagreeing, but for the better of the organization and figuring out together what the right path. That's why also board discussions are secret, because these discussions have to be frank. They're on parity, right? There is nobody who's a boss of anybody there, but they have to remain secret so that the voice that is heard is the voice of the board. It's not the voice of the chair. It's the voice of the board, the one voice principle, a fundamental principle of governance.
Now, I know in your book you have what you call the 4 pillars of an effective board. Can you give us, of course, you could probably talk about this all day or a weekend lecture, but could you give us just a quick overview of what those pillars are and what we should be aware of?
Yes, we started already and we discussed the people that are on the board, right? How you need skills, dedication, focus, and diversity. And people have to look at the right topics, right? But the second pillar is the quality of the information. Information is so crucial these days. Internal information to the organization, but also external information on competitors, on evolution and of the world changes, and informal information. As the chair of Singapore Airlines goes and have a coffee with the union leaders, because he's non-executive, right? He's not a full-time person. So they have a more informal discussion, and then he can actually inform the CEO of the challenges that the unions are facing, which has made Singapore Airlines one of the airlines with the least strikes and least employee problems that is. The third pillar is structures and processes. You need a long list of processes, the audit process, the risk process, the strategy process, the nomination process, the performance review process, long list of processes of quality that you need on a board. And the fourth is group dynamics and culture of governance, how to reach that constructive dissent, how to ensure that you are not confronted to poor discussions or poor decision styles.
Do you find that a board, if you were saying what they're going to be doing, is it more supporting the business, supervisory, discipline? Do they ever have to reach out and say, we hear that this department or this person or this officer is not conveying the image we want, any of those departments, I guess, or headings that you'd say, does the board come over, and is that really what its main force would be?
That's exactly right, Bill. A board has to balance supervision with support. And this creates an interesting relationship with management, right? Because, the board ultimately hires and fires management, and especially the CEO. And at the same time, it has to be a trusted relationship. So it has to be a trusted relationship with the body of the organization that fires or hires the CEO. And for that, you need the support as well. And there has to be integrity behind. The trust that the board is doing what's the best for the organization. So watching out for any integrity problem, conflicts of interest, side deals, etc., right? It has to be with a lot of integrity behind. And then, selecting what you want to be more on, right? Is it more supervision or is it more support? And that will depend on the organization. It's a choice. Sometimes, you've had a few problems and it's better to be harsh on supervision. Sometimes it's all about coaching the CEO. Sometimes it's about helping the CEO design the strategy because the CEO doesn't have all the views of stakeholders and the context that's necessary. And sometimes it's about supervising external risks, right? And so always that balancing between support and supervision.
And real quickly, what's the most common problem that when you go in, you would say 20 or 30% of the time, the problem with the board is Bing? What's the fill in the blank?
I think the worst, the one that bothers me the more, is a poor quality relationship between management and board. And by the way, on the negative or positive side, right? When people are too cozy, or where there is tension, right? Because that's very painful to resolve. It has to be a trusted relationship. Another one, of course, that I need to mention because it's so present in the world are integrity issues. Conflicts of interest. And that is a big no-no, right? We have to watch for that all the time.
Didier, once again, we want our audience to know the book is High Performance Boards by our guest Didier Cossin, spelled Didiercossin. Please give us the website once again.
So Amazon.com, obviously, right, to buy the book, but alternative bookshops, of course, are most welcome. And then IMD, Isabel Mary Daniel, IMD.org.
Didier, thank you so much for being with us, giving us some instructions. I'm going to remember what you said by looking for the red flags if I get invited to join a board and see what the problems are before I make a commitment. We'd like our audience to know that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we will continue our journey to success.